Hey there, and welcome to the Whitwam Organics Weekly Garden Report. My name is David Whitwam, and I am your host. So, we're going to talk a little bit about a plant today that I seem to really enjoy killing because um, I grow it every year, and I'm not great at it. It is not my forte whatsoever, and that is strawberry plants. But what I am going to do is go over with you guys some tips that I've learned and some things that I've learned that definitely kills them. So we're getting better and better at it every year. Um, and hopefully this year will be better than last year. But before we get into talking about bare root strawberries and planting them, I want to run through with you guys our weekly nursery report. So I brought these from the seed tables. Just wanted to show you guys this, just because it's so beautiful. So this is a tray. See if I can hold it without dropping it. This is a tray of some of our Asian greens and mustard greens. If you are not familiar with choho, it's kind of a tatsoi. That's red giant mustard, Mike giant mustard, and komatasuma, which is also kind of a tatsoi. Those do really well for us. Everything you see here is fairly heat tolerant. Nothing has been started indoors. We've been dealing with the same weather that you guys have probably been dealing with in your backyards. Um, I did want to show you guys what some of this stuff looks like after we have upplanted it into our 4-packs. So this is some of our Chinese cabbage. And this is the komatasuma as it's growing big. Let's just call this a loose leaf bok choy. If you're not familiar with tatsoi, that's what this is, like a loose leaf bok choy. Really good. It's a cut and come again plant. You just kind of cut the leaves off and you can use it in soup salads and stir fries. You've probably seen something similar to this, like in a spring mix or something like that. But real tasty. Like I said, fairly heat tolerant. Um, and I really enjoy growing it. If you want to get the most out of your, square footage in a small garden, I like to stick with these cut and come again plants. Collards would be in that category, kale. Um, Once it cools off a little bit more, we have a whole grouping of plants that I like to introduce people to. We call them the flowering brassicas. If you're familiar at all with rapini or broccoli rabe, that would fall in that category. Broccoli rabe is sort of related to a mustard green, so they're really bitter. But it's that type of plant that puts out leaves and then shoots right away. So it's supposed to bolt. We have a Yu Choi Sum. That one's kind of more related to a bok choy. Call it a flowering bok choy. And then we also have something called Chinese broccoli. That one is actually more related to a kale. And then we also have a flowering cabbage. The Chinese broccolis, well, actually, the Yu Choi Sum is also kind of referred to in the restaurant business as a Chinese broccoli. If you've ever gone to a traditional Asian restaurant and had broccoli in your food that was like really cooked in the food, like in a soup or in a stir fry, as y'all probably know, that if we took our regular broccoli and did that with it, it would just turn into brown mush. In fact, if you go to like an Americanized Chinese street food restaurant and there's broccoli in your stir fry and it's the broccoli that you're used to, that we typically get at the grocery store, they usually steam that separately and then kind of toss it in with everything at the very end. If you actually tried to stir fry our regular broccoli, it would just turn to a brown mush. I'm sure everybody who's watching has probably overcooked broccoli before. Well, all of these Chinese broccolis can really handle cooking, much like broccoli rabe. It's a much tougher plant. So it stands actually cooking it into the dish, and it is just filled with flavor and absolutely delicious. Here in just on the other side of Seminole Heights, we have a restaurant called Yummy House, and they actually do feature the Chinese broccolis on their menu. I believe I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's technically called shuiho. Um, but it's like just Chinese broccoli, or yeah. But that whole category is on our website under flowering brassicas, and under that category, you'll find all these yu choy sums, the Chinese kale, um, broccoli rabe rapini, and also some of our sprouting broccolis. That's the Paracicaba broccoli is on that list. Um, and that's just, like I said, if you want to maximize your output in your garden, especially over the winter time, these cut and come again plants are phenomenal. Anything that you can just pick the leaves off of or chop the florets off of, and it just continues to produce throughout the season. Um, on a negative note, we have been still dealing with kind of the remnants of whitefly problems in the nursery, and I'm still seeing them on pepper plants. Not so much on the tomatoes, but tomatoes are just getting started. We're seeing some fungus gnats that we're treating for in our nursery. The pest control products that we use are a BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, the Israelis or something like that, the BTI, which is the same thing that's in mosquito dunks. So you could just get mosquito dunks and dissolve them in water if you're having issues with fungus gnats. And we're also, as these days are getting shorter, we're seeing some signs of powdery mildew. So keep an eye out on powdery mildew, and either remove the leaves or whatever your poison is as far as treating them. I know some people like to use milk. I just try a manual, removal and keep it under control that way. If it gets really, really bad, it's usually because I have a plant in the wrong time of year. It's really important this time of year that your cucumbers, anything that could get powdery mildew on it, you really want to plant that stuff in areas of your garden that could get the most sun. That's really your best defense against powdery mildews, is lots and lots and lots of sunshine. So what I've been planting out in gardens this week is the topic of today. We've been planting lots and lots of strawberries, bare root strawberry plants. We've also planted a few more rounds of hot peppers. We're continuing to transplant out more eggplants. We're continuing to transplant out more tomatoes. This time of year, like on social media, it's kind of weird because just a few weeks ago, or even a week ago, the talk of the town was, wait for your fall garden. It's still too early. And it's really interesting to see the conversation flip so fast to people saying, oh, am I too late? Am I too late? It's not necessarily that there's such a fine line between being too late and too early. It's just that if you kind of consider your fall garden, what is going to be mostly growing in your garden, say in November, in my opinion, that would include your probably tail end of very, very late summer crops, your warm season, what I would actually consider to be fall crops, and your first round of winter crops. Winter crops are anything, this is my definitions. Winter crops are anything that can take a frost and probably doesn't like summers too much. And then your fall crops are what I call the Goldilocks plants. Those are things that don't like the summer and they don't really like to take a frost. So the reason why I think the dissonance in the rhetoric on are you too late or are you too early for your fall garden is because, like I said, if you took a snapshot of everything we have in our gardens in November and you start talking about planting by seed, some of that stuff we started way back in July, like some of the peppers, eggplants, and tomatoes. And then maybe August through September, we were starting to plant some of our cucumbers and some of our squash. and then and transplanting some of that stuff out into the garden. And then, coming up right now, we're planting some of those more heat tolerant winter vegetables. So I guess, depending on when you're jumping in on this and what plants you're interested in planting, and whether or not you would like to buy start stuff by seed in any given day throughout that time frame, you could be too late or too early for one thing or another. So it really is kind of just a spectrum of planting from, say, end of July all the way through. In Florida, Central Florida here, you're really never too late or too early for your garden overall. Maybe too late or too early for specific plants, or too late or too early for specific plants by seed. But for a garden overall, you're never really too late or too early. You can really kind of jump in at any time. What's going to change is whether or not you should be buying starts or starting stuff by seed. So I would say if you're getting into the fall garden game at this point, you probably should be hunting down starts for tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, squash, cucumbers. It's a little late to start that stuff by seed. If you're looking to buy to put in some of these heat tolerant winter vegetables, you're pretty much right on time, maybe a tad on the early side. I think I've talked about this before. I always like to err on the early side. But it's definitely not too late to get your kale and collards, broccoli started by seed. And even there's some gardeners out there would say it's still too hot and you might even be a little bit too early. I mean, I still have a lot of gardens out there that have empty beds. We were kind of holding back on planting everything because we wanted to save room for, lettuce and carrots and beets and turnips and things that definitely like that cooler weather. The cool down that we just got a couple weeks ago, I was really hoping that was it and that it would stick. I think that these storms coming through the Gulf kind of screwed that up. But looking at the 2-week forecast, we got another cool down right around the corner. And hopefully that one sticks and kind of carries us through to fall and into winter. Just to reiterate what I'm talking about looking for as far as a cool down goes, I'm looking for nighttime temperatures in the upper 60s, mid 60s, lower 60s, anything in the 60s, maybe even a couple mornings in the lower 70s, but that's not the norm. And daytime temperatures just definitely not getting into the 90s anymore. Hopefully mid to lower 80s for daytime highs. That's really what I mean by a cool down. I mean, if we can kind of float around somewhere in the 60s for nighttime temperatures and mid to lower 80s for daytime temperatures, that's really perfect weather. It shouldn't stress out your winter vegetables too much. Maybe not perfect weather for some of the lettuces, but definitely your kale and collards. Like I said, they might show some stress, but they should still be kind of cranking along. But your real fall vegetables, those Goldilocks plants, that's just perfect weather for them. Basically, when it's comfortable outside, they're the happiest. So the longer we maintain those temperatures, the longer our fall crops will produce for us. The reason why I keep doing this is because I know a lot of people consider their fall crops whatever it is that they're planting in their fall garden, and I don't really classify things in my head that way. I classify plants as a summer plant or a winter plant or a spring or fall plant. So that's why, end of October, November, you very possibly in your fall garden could have summer crops. If you planted okra late and it's still cranking, you could have fall crops, your tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, and you could have winter crops, your kale, collards, and broccoli, carrots, stuff like that. So really your fall garden is kind of a mishmash of whatever you want to put in there. This is definitely the peak of our season. So if you hadn't gotten started yet on your garden, it's definitely not too late. Get out there and get going with it. So we are reaching, I'm going to keep this one at 30 minutes today. And we have reached the halfway point. So I'm going to get into our topic, strawberries. So if you got bare root strawberries from us, this is probably, they'll come in a bag like this inside of a box. And for those of you not familiar with what we're talking about when we say bare root strawberry plants, and these are the Sensation. Come 25 in a bundle, and this is what we're looking at right here. So this is a little group of plants, and here's one plant. And that thing looks half dead. Actually, if anybody out there has ever bought bare root strawberries before, you guys know these look really good for bare root strawberries. So here's the roots right here. Stand up so I can get a little closer. Okay, here's the roots. This is what's called the crown of the plant, and then these are just basically, the stems with the leaves on it. So the strawberry plant itself is actually really tiny. It's just this part right here. And a strawberry farmer told me a long time ago that if two people planted strawberry plants and one accidentally planted them a little bit too deep and the other one just threw them on the ground really hard, the one that got thrown on the ground really hard is more likely to make it than one that gets planted too deep. So what most people, when you get these and you go to plant them, what most people end up doing, because when you put this in the ground, it's really going to want to flop over. And so it's kind of natural to plant them down so they stand up straight. So if you plant them like that, that's too deep. Let's see if we can get real close. So right here on the bottom where the roots are coming out, that's where you want it buried to. You don't want any of this top part buried. So just right about to there. And let me look through this pile and see if any of them have started pushing new roots. Oh, that's so small. I don't know if y'all can see this. That's all blurry. But right there, there's a little white dot right there under my finger. So that is a new root getting ready to come out. So these bare roots that the plant comes with may or may not actually come to life and grow new roots off of it, but the plant will definitely push new roots out from right there at the bottom of the crown. So we definitely want to make sure that those are kind of buried. But a lot of times when I bury them, that part right there will be kind of right above the ground. So if anybody has driven through Plant City this time of year, you will see the strawberry farmers plant their plants out in full sun, and basically for the first week or so run those sprinklers all day long. And the reason why is because when these plants travel, these actually came from Canada, when these plants travel, they're cooled, and here at Whitwam Organics we store them in the refrigerator. And so when you take them out and they start coming up to temperature, they break dormancy and they start trying to grow. Don't be surprised if almost all these leaves die, and the plant should start pushing out new healthy leaves from the middle of the crown and start pushing out new roots right from the bottom of the crown. So really to try and you want to water these things, overhead water them. So you're basically keeping the crown wet. And that's the challenge, is because I'm sure we all know keeping plants wet all the time can induce fungus problems. So that's always been the real challenge, is basically letting them dry out a little bit between waterings, but not drying out too much, and giving these roots that are coming in right below the crown time to grow. When I plant these bare root strawberry plants out in gardens, I usually get about a 10% loss. When we plant them in our nursery, we get between a 15 and 30% loss. The real challenge for us in the nursery is, I think out in the gardens, we have garden soil, which contains a lot of sand. If anybody's ever been out there picking strawberries, you'll know that they're grown in extremely sandy soil. So they got to stay really wet, but also get really good drainage. And when we're starting them here in the nursery, we have to start them in something, we either use these like a little 6-pack, or we might start some of them in a 4-inch pot. We've been kind of bouncing around between the deep pot versus the shallow pot because once they get going, they do like deeper roots. So we're actually probably this year going with these deeper 6-packs for getting them started, and we'll be selling them as just starts. Basically, once they start pushing out those new roots and flushing out new growth on the leaves, these will be available to sell. That'll be in about 3 weeks. And then after, a few weeks of them outgrowing this, if we haven't sold any, we will be popping them out of here and transplanting them into a 4-inch pot. And this year, we're going to go with these deeper pots. I think our biggest challenge as well is coconut. Our biggest challenge has been dialing in the soil for starting them in these smaller containers. Not obviously, but to experienced gardeners, obviously you can't just take garden soil and throw it in pots and be successful because it's too heavy, and it doesn't get good enough drainage in these pots. You really need something that holds some water but also gets good drainage. So last year we did them in a complete mix of potting soil, which was mostly peat moss. And this year we are going to be doing a blend. I'm going to show you guys this. It's probably not even going to show up where you can even really tell. But this year we're doing a blend of our potting soil Pro Mix. And so 50% of our Pro Mix potting soil and 50% of our 50-50 garden soil that we sell. And so we took our 50-50 garden soil that I put in raised beds, and we mix that 50-50 with our Pro Mix MP that we sell. And hopefully we will see. I've been doing strawberries in the nursery for about 8 years now. Like I said, every year some new problem crops up. We kill a bunch, we learn something new, and we change it up, and we try something else. So the good news is relatively speaking, because this right here is going to be $10. And I don't know if you've ever seen them at Home Depot or something, but single plants or 3 plants, they're kind of expensive. So these will be, I don't remember how much we're going to sell the 4-inch pots for, but you're looking at a substantial amount of money per plant to get them started. So the bare root strawberries, you get 25 for $15. So don't be too heartbroken if you lose a bunch. Consider it a learning process, because if you can dial it in for what works for you and in your environment, in your yard, you're going to save a ton of money. So if you're new to bare roots, don't be too upset if you lose some. But I'm going to go ahead and plant one of these in the 4-inch pot. So I'm going to grab some of our potting soil. Keep forgetting what side of my phone my camera's on. I'm going to kind of compress that down just a little bit. Now I am going to dig a little hole in the middle. So these roots, like I said, most of these roots aren't going to really do anything. They're just kind of there to help hold the plant in place. Wish I had a table right here higher so you can see what I'm doing. But I'm going to do this down here. I'm just basically going to take the plant and I'm going to push it down into the hole that I just made. So I just made I don't think the hole's going to stay. I just made a hole with my fingers down to the bottom. And now I'm going to push the plant down in there. I'm just going to shove those roots down in there. That's what I'm down here doing. Kind of tuck it in. Usually what I like to end up with is something that looks like that. I don't know if y'all can see. I do the same thing when I'm doing this in the garden. And then right here at the crown level, right there, is kind of what I've eyeballed as being where the rest of the garden soil is at. So once I've kind of pushed it down in there and I hover it where I need it to be, and then I'll actually, if I was in a garden, I would just kind of scoop it off to the side, but then I take more soil and I pack it around it like that. That's what I'm doing down here. Packing the soil around it. That's it. It's done. As you can see, it's really floppy. We can still see the bottom of that crown. Buried a little bit, but literally the roots, I don't know if y'all can see, pull back the soil a little. The roots are right there. So I just barely covered up those roots. So as you can see, the plant is very floppy, and that bottom of that crown is not buried at all. So we are going to place these on our seed table, kind of toward the back over there, which is, it's not a shady location, but it's the most shady location in our nursery. And we're actually going to set the water to come on for 10 minutes, 4 times a day. We're going to do that for the first week. And well, like I said, once we start seeing some roots come in, and once we start seeing new leaves come out of the crown, that's when we're going to start moving them, slowly moving them to different parts of the nursery that get a little bit more sun. And then by the time, maybe in about 2 weeks, they're going to be back here on this side of the nursery that gets full sun. So we're going to get them in full sun as soon as possible, and get them on a little bit more of a regular watering regimen, which is, maybe once or twice a day, depending on how sunny it is outside, or cloudy rather. If it's really cloudy outside, we might water for longer, once a day. Give plants a little bit more of an opportunity to dry out. As far as fungus problems, the 2 main fungicides, organic fungicides that we use for a myriad of problems with our strawberries, we have a product called Capacity Plus, and that contains chitosan. I also hear a lot of talk through social media when somebody has nematode problems. Everybody's tuning in to the beauty of chitosan. People use crushed crab shells and crushed shrimp shells and products of that sort in their garden for nematodes. Our chitosan product, the Capacity Plus, is actually a liquid. So you can soil drench that in your garden for nematodes, but because it's a liquid, you can also mix it up in a spray bottle and spray your plants down with it. Chitosan does not just help with nematodes. It also has a lot of antifungal properties. You could spray it on, a marble slab that's sitting in your house, and the mildews will just kind of come off of it. I know one lady used to buy it from me until she got out of the business. She had horses, and she would dump a little bit of it into her feeding troughs because it kept the algae from building up on the edges of her feeding troughs. So a lot of the fungus problems that you can get that are kind of mold and mildew related, the chitosan, the Capacity Plus, will help with those. And then the other product that we use is Serenade. On our website, it's available by the gallon, called Rhapsody. But in the nursery, I buy it by the 20-pound bag, and it's branded as Serenade. And that's Bacillus subtilis, and that's a bacteria that actually, when you coat it on your plants, there's a lot of funguses out there that it gobbles up. So those are the 2 main products that we're going to use continually out in the nursery to try and keep various fungus problems down with the strawberries. Some other problems that people have with them, I have never had problems with spider mites. I've never even really had problems with spider mites, period, in any of my gardens, and doing this for 10 years. I think I barely even know what they look like by looking at pictures. I've had them a couple times, but never a really big issue. But that is I've heard that that spider mites can be a big problem with strawberries. If you are watching this after we've recorded our live session, and you would like to comment on any advice you want to give to other people, if you've been growing strawberries a while, if you have any tips or tricks, I know I'm open to learning more. Just keep it organic, guys. As far as in the comments, you can do whatever you want at home, but that's we can drive down to Plant City and talk to farmers, and there's plenty of people growing strawberries non-organically. They got that nailed down. I could figure that out in a heartbeat. But growing them organically, especially in a backyard setting, is a little bit more of a challenge. However, the good news is, if you can get them through this first stage, this is what I found with strawberries. If you can get them through this first stage and not kill them, get them to flesh out into full plants, they're relatively easy to take care of. If you, like I said, if you can keep them alive and not completely kill them, they're productive. You might only be getting one strawberry a week per plant if you're completely messing it up. But if you at least don't kill them, they give you something. And if you're doing this with your kids and just for enjoyment, that ain't bad, because it's just uphill from there. Once you figured out how to not kill them in the beginning, and you can keep them alive, and they're giving you a strawberry a week per plant. Like I said, it's just all uphill from there. Learning what how to fertilize them and give them the minerals they need. And do you put more fertilizer in the soil on the front end, or do you put less fertilizer in the soil on the front end, but do more side dressing, more liquid treatments? We're still playing with all that. But if you want them to get, if you want to get to a point where you're getting a strawberry per day per plant, that's going to take some time. You're going to have to. It takes time to dial that in and really figure it out. We do have a few local organic strawberry farmers, like I said, but they're growing in scale. And I'm cozying up to them, and they're starting to divulge some of their secrets. But that's been a little difficult because they've put in a lot of time and effort trying to figure that out for organic strawberries in Florida. And I get it that they're playing their cards close to their chest. I definitely don't fault them for that. But I'd really like to figure this out. I'd really love it if it would just be an open book and tell me what it is that they're doing. That way I could pass that information on to backyard gardeners. So that's it for this week. Don't plant them too deep. Make sure that if you're putting them straight into garden beds, give them as much sun as they need. The more sun, the better during our winter months. Once you get these bare roots in the ground or in a pot or in a container, give them lots and lots of overhead water. You're really wetting that plant until it can grow new roots down into that soil. Multiple times a day if you need to. Some sort of overhead sprayer or watering cans that kind of come out like the rain. Oh, I'm reading some comments here. How do you fertilize cucumbers? So we'll get to questions in just one second. The main thing is to make sure that they stay well watered, and that you're growing them in full sun. If you think about, like I said, think about the strawberry farmers out in Plant City, they're putting those things out in full sun, and they actually water them all day, every day, for like the first couple days, so that they can get established. Don't plant too deep. It's counterintuitive how deep you plant your strawberry plants. So if you can kind of remember those few things and keep a few plants alive, hopefully you'll get something out of them this season, and we'll all learn together on how to actually be successful with them and getting them to produce heavily all winter long. So that's it. If you are joining me on Facebook, I just want to let everybody know that I'm also simulcasting live onto my YouTube channel, just in case over the next couple weeks you got to get off Facebook. I completely understand, but these are also going to be available to watch and rewatch on my YouTube channel, which you can find easily. It's just Whitwam Organics on YouTube. Then you can either tune in live, you can comment live with us on YouTube, or stick with us on Facebook. If you cannot join me on Wednesdays at 5:30 for the live broadcast, and you would like to participate with your questions or comments or have any topic ideas, you can email me at info@whitwamorganics.com. I check that the days before the live broadcast. So if you have any gardening questions that you would like me to cover in the next segment, please, and you can't join me live, then please send your questions to that email and I will be sure to get to them. Daria's question was how to fertilize cucumbers. So we put all of our fertilizer for our cucumbers in the soil in the beginning. We use our, for a raised bed, we use our 50/50 compost blend. You can find that on our website. We sell that by the bag. We also sell that in bulk deliveries if you're local to Tampa, the Tampa area. And I know that soil. I know it well, and so I know exactly how much fertilizer to use as a general fertilizer for all vegetables, including the cucumbers. So we take our 566 fertilizer and we put that in the raised beds at 3 pounds per 32 square feet. And we actually mix that together with a 1200 fertilizer just to bump up the nitrogen a little bit at a rate of 1.5 pounds per 32 square feet. And that is not, like the reason why we calculate that out based on square footage, not cubic footage of your total soils, because you're really just mixing that into the top like 3 inches of the soil. And then we follow up for the first week or so with our Compost Plus fertilizer. All these are available on the website. The Compost Plus fertilizer, we feed everything initially right at planting, and then we also feed it with our Micros Plus fertilizer, and we put in also a nice layer of our Capacity Plus, the soil amendment. Then we follow up 2 to 3 times a week for the next 2 or 3 weeks with additional treatments of the Compost Plus, and that's really just to kick everything in the butt and get it going until those plants can really develop a relationship with the soil and the biology that's in the soil, can start breaking down those fertilizers and can start breaking down the great stuff that's in our compost garden soil. So that's, we don't do anything special for cucumbers. It's the same thing that we do for our tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, squash, all the above. If you go on the website and go under shop and then go under soil amendments and fertilizers and look under the 566, Nature Safe 566, I actually have that formula in the product description. And then a follow-up question, and then I got to go, was what is your recommendation for the type of cucumbers to grow in Florida? Again, if you go on our website, you will see the cucumbers that I kind of push forward. The Summer Dance and the Soya Nishiki cucumbers, we grow them all summer, believe it or not, from late spring, all summer, and through fall, pretty much till December. Right now, this time of year, we are planting, like I said, plants of the Summer Dance and Soya Nishikis. They should already be pretty big, but by seed, we're still putting out Marketmore cucumbers and our Armenian cucumbers. Those both kind of like the more temperate weather that we're going to have over the next couple months. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. And if you got bare root strawberries from me or somebody else, good luck, and I will see you next week.